I'm Clara, and it's such a pleasure to be with all of you here today. From Lynn, it is a celebration, and I think I can understand why. I'm really honored to be here today with all of you because it is an important platform. It is a platform that actually celebrates, some of these efforts that's gone on for the last 3 years. It's a gathering of minds, in terms of wanting to discuss very important topic in our hearts, And that is, of course, how to develop our students for the future. I really want to thank, Lynn, FTech Group, her wonderful staff, who have been looking after Sharon and myself over the past 10 days. We have had the privilege, and thank you to the schools as well, for inviting us to be in your classrooms, because we know that's a very sacred place, a very special space for us to come in, to be able to interact with your teachers, with your students, to get a better understanding of that whole process as well. So I think on that note, I'm really, really very appreciative of all, the wonderful people that I've met. Very quickly, I'm going to move into a slide just to give you a bit of context, in terms of where I come from. So as you can see, this is an overview of the different branches and the divisions in the Ministry of Education, the professional wing. We've got the services wing as well as the policy wing, but this is the professional wing. And this is where Arts Education branch is also located. We look after arts education, and we're talking about music, art, drama, as well as dance. And we oversee 15 syllabuses. So in schools, we know this as, those guides, and of course, our students do take exams. We've got 8 special programs, 67 categories of visual performing arts co-curricular activities. And we look after about 20% of the entire cohort of Singaporean students who opt to take one of these VPA CCAs, as we call it. We do work very closely with the other branches as well. For example, we work with STAR. You can see this logo there, Singapore Teachers Academy for the Arts. And apart from that, they look after very much teaching, training programs as well as professional development. We also work with the arts education ecosystem outside as well. So we're really talking about agencies like the National Arts Council, cultural institutions like the Esplanade, Singapore Symphony Orchestra, and so on and so forth. So I think this just gives you a bit of a backdrop in terms of how some of these things come together. And I think earlier the MC had actually mentioned that I was a principal in 2 schools over 13 years. Seems like such a long time ago, but precisely when I entered the schools, I was reminded about the excitement. That's where the action is, at the school level as well. Now, students are the reason why we're all here, And they are also the reason for why we do the things that we do. So let's lean into today's session, with a little activity. I'm sure you're all quite familiar with a Mentimeter. So if I could ask you to whip up your mobile devices, we're just going to tune in, This is just tuning in. And we're going to offer a word or a short phrase in response to this question: what could success look like for our students in the future? So if we could take a minute or so, and we'll see some of these inputs around the room, what we think success looks like for our students in the future. The marvels of technology. So we're going to see later on, that word cloud that will be coming up. Oh, sorry. I'm interfering with the QR code. Okay, just a word. What comes to mind, This one, don't need to overthink it. Maybe we can start to see some of the words forming up. Okay, so those of you familiar with Mentimeter, the word, all right, that's really appearing to be bigger would be the ones that many participants have been also putting in. So we've got words, creativity, happy, collaboration, innovation, contribution, curiosity, contribution, dream. Okay, still growing. We'll wait for it to slow down a little bit, and then you're beginning to get that picture, right? Happiness, enjoy. Eager for knowledge, passionate. Okay. Thank you all for your responses. So this is extremely heartening to see for ourselves, and we're just reading the room, right? Nobody's discussing, all right? This is something that we have contributed to today's session. I think what is very clear, thank you, you'll carry on like that, but you get a sense, what's emerging. I did not see results, right? We did not see exam scores. But I think it's really something that we have known for a while now, that we have actually moved away from that very narrow definition of what success is about, right? And we can see that we do value our students' individual strengths. We want their well-being, all right? Some of that is very important as well. And of course, to recognize how they can actually tap their own talents to contribute. It's important to remember that childhood is not a rehearsal, right? It is not a rehearsal for some big musical called life, all right, premiering in some, distant future. Life does not begin when that student walks out on stage to collect their diploma. It begins long before that. It begins now. And that's why we're here, again, as I go back to, as educators, all right, we feel that we need to create those conditions, all right, to enable them to thrive and flourish now. Our children will grow up, all right, really knowing that each of them have that special skill and talent to be able to contribute in their own unique way. They are not just about chasing some single yardstick, all right? This is really something that we want to actually move towards. Now, in his book, Alvin Toffler, you may have heard about this quote, the third wave, right? He had said, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Probably we're very familiar with this quote. A man ahead of his time. I think this resonates with the title of my keynote, given that, Toffler was basically saying that knowledge is not static, right? And really, in terms of what knowledge is not just about what we are taught in school, because our world is in constant flux and change. So it's not sufficient to simply do more of what we've done before. The answers, indeed, are not behind us. So in order to remain relevant, we too must innovate, adapt, and desire to build a better future for ourselves and for our next generation. So what I hope to be able to do today, all right, to offer a perspective of what we do and why we do what we do in Singapore, the considerations of some of these policy directions and priorities, and how that translates into practice, right? We always think about policy, but how is that translated into practice? And of course, thinking about whether those things helped or hindered our efforts to developing future-ready learners. Right, next. So maybe just a little bit of historical context, because it's always important to appreciate the circumstances of our early years, at least, where Singapore comes from, and especially the early years post-independence. Now, as a small nation without natural resources, Singapore placed a very strong emphasis on education, right, to build a skilled workforce. Now, this value is very deeply ingrained in our society. Education is seen as, a key to social mobility, and that hard work in school and the workforce will lead to financial security and success. Right? So in the survival-driven, okay, that tells you something, yeah? In the survival-driven phase, post-independence, there was an urgent need, to build schools, right? To build schools, so it was rapidly sort of ramped up. It was also about doubling the teaching force as well, right? Because that was also very important to get teachers in the schools to be able to teach the children. This helped, of course, the economy grow, moving us up the value chain towards more capital and skills-intensive industries. The efficient-driven phase, right? You can see this in tandem with the economic development in Singapore as well. The efficiency-driven phase saw a system designed to ensure that more students progressed and fewer fell through the cracks. Right? So this phase also included things like streaming, ability-driven streaming, actually, and so on. Now, at the turn of the century, education systems around the world were looking at how they could better prepare for the future by equipping them with the requisite knowledge, competencies, values, and dispositions. Knowledge is certainly important, right? But it's no longer enough. So the interest in creativity and creative education is not new in Singapore. All right, so actually in 1997, there was the Thinking Schools Learning Nation vision. And in 2004, there was actually the Teach Less, Learn More movement. Now, these initiatives were actually very pivotal, all right, in preparing our students for the challenges of the 21st century, and yet at the same time, addressing some of the fixation on academic performance. Now, the 21st century competencies, what I'm going to be calling 21CC because it's quite a mouthful, and student outcomes framework, all right, was actually introduced in 2010. All right, so you can see that there was actually a trajectory. It was not something that happened all of a sudden. And just last year, this framework was actually refreshed. So what you see here, the green words were actually added with the refresh. All right, so you imagine the 2010 version is without those green words. But essentially, the main ideas are quite intact. All right, so this 21CC framework identified a list of competencies. You can see that it's on the orange outer ring. All right, so that's the 21, we call it the emerging 21CC. And within that, the pink ring, you can actually see the SEL, the social emotional competencies, because it is also necessary for students to enact values purposefully, right? It is not just about the 21CC and not anchored upon anything. And right at the center, you can actually see core values, the rich values, as we call it, RICH, all right? Because they really form one's character. So they're right at the center. So these are the bedrock that supports the growth of all other competencies. Now, curriculum content had been actually reduced by about 30% on average at that time, all right, to create sufficient time and space, because we all know that it's a very crowded curriculum that schools have. It was to make space for critical and inventive thinking and creativity. So the revised syllabus, provided opportunities for inquiry, investigative approaches facilitated by teachers. All right. So the whole approach in Singapore is actually to weave 21CC into the fabric of our total curriculum. So what this means is that our students, all right, encounter this on a daily basis in every subject, every period, every day. Right? So this is not seen separately, but as complementary elements of education. So some examples of how this was enacted, maybe the next slide, just to show you that 21CC could be seen in the subjects I mentioned, all right, the academic subjects, but also in programs like project work, where we have project work in primary 3s, for example. So when I was a principal in a school, one of our project works for the children involved coding as well, right? So coding and how they use that to develop certain solutions, actually, all right, to help their grandparents be able to move around the house at that time. And also for the co-curricular activities, I mentioned that, for example, in visual performing arts, there are many things that our students can be involved in, all right, to develop their 21cc as well as creativity. Now, if I can move on very quickly then, round about that time, so I'm still trying to stretch through the whole trajectory of 21cc and how this framework was rolled out as well. Now, it can't just be a framework and we expect schools to be able to carry out things, right? The Ministry of Education at that time was seen to be very supportive, right, of actually also offering support in developing PE, art and music, in primary schools, right? Because this was recognized that it would enable students to actually develop physical robustness, enhance their creative and expressive capacities, as well as shape their personal, cultural, and social identities. So this was actually something that was important to note because usually these subjects were sidelined, right? So the fact that more attention was paid to it suggested that there was interest in terms of how this could actually support the other areas as well. Next. So here are some examples of the programs. I mentioned structured programs and infrastructure. This was PAL, P-A-L, Program for Active Learning, really for our lower primary students. Infrastructure, there was additional support in terms of new generation primary schools, right? So we had new band rooms, performing arts studios, really for students to be able to interact, self-discover, and also have hands-on learning as well. Thanks. So similarly, I mentioned about additional grants as well as training as well. Now, let's move on to the next slide. I'm not sure how many of you have actually heard of George Land's creativity test. So essentially, all right, this was a test to select participants to be on the NASA program, right, the space program. The test was so successful that George decided to test it on the younger children, 1,600 in that sample as well. Let's quickly guess, all right? How many percent of 5-year-olds do you think actually succeeded in this test? Just shout out. 100%? Oh, quite close actually. So the answer was actually 98%. Right. So let's guess, what about the 10-year-olds? 10-year-olds? Oh, okay, the results are out. So guess what? And for the adults, how many percent? 2%. 2%. So I think this is really something that you want to be mindful of, why that's happening, why we're all here. And this was again triangulated by Ken Robinson later on as well, right? He made a reference to this particular part. So perhaps, all right, to be more creative, to be a creative problem solver, perhaps we need to unlearn some of the things that we think we know, right? So I thought that was something that was quite important. Let's move on. So during this period of time, 3 key shifts in our landscape, all right? It was really the notion of unlearning, right? You got to let go, right? To learning, it's not just about learning for exams. So beyond learning for grades to learning for mastery. Beyond learning for school, all right, you're talking about learning for life because, and of course, beyond just learning to get a job, it is learning through life. So that was something that I felt was very significant during that point in time. You're talking about 21cc, but the shifts happening as well, all right, in the backdrop. So I mentioned I was a principal, and what that looked on ground was what I'm going to share with you in terms of 21cc through school-based programs, all right? So earlier you heard about how it's, put into these syllabus documents, and how some broader infrastructural, resource-based support given by, the government. But here at ground, how did schools carry out some of these 21cc in their programs? Now in Singapore, truly, each school, and I'm sure the same as schools around the world as well, each school has its unique identity, its niche area, its area of strength. The point here is to identify what is that natural fit, all right, and to be able to build on that strength, because that way there's more ownership, right? So as a principle driving change, it was really about vision for learning, creating that culture, and of course you needed to provide the support for learning. Right, next. So 2 signature programs I remember this first one was in the first school I led, which was an all-girls convent school, CHIJ Kellogg, right? And this was where we got a whole school involved in a community action in action-based learning, all right? So it was designing Children's Day, all right, celebrating Children's Day for another 1,000 less privileged children. So here, tapping on the strength of the school, we were very strong in the arts. The girls were able to perform, put together craft stalls in order to be able to engage, right, their fellow friends from other schools as well. Next. And for the second school that I ran, that was Yuneng Primary, we managed to run a learning festival. All right, learning festival, not just a one-off event, because this was meant to stitch together what the school offered, so that there was more coherence in terms of the many programs that we were doing, but to stitch it in a whole such that parents, visitors could understand what the children were learning. And again, in terms of what the children were able to reach out and engage the audience, we were also amazed as well. Because a lot of the teachers at that time suggested that they were, a bit skeptical. They were worried that the children would say wrong things and things like that. But I think they really rose to the occasion. Next. Teachers, they are so key, right? I talk about the teachers because they were really the key to unlocking some of these initiatives as well. In school, we had staff seminars. It was developed by staff, for staff as well. Why is this important? Learning is social, all right? It's really about coming together. The teachers were worried, of course, in embarking on some of these new initiatives, but really, how do we make the invisible visible? Right? It's articulating a language, to have a common language, to be able to see it for themselves, and more importantly, to be able to step out of their own comfort zones in a safe environment and kind of get a sense of what that felt like, right? Because they have to enact it in the class as well. So these were just some of the staff seminars that we actually had in school. Next. Key driving forces, I think I mentioned earlier, right? I think in this increasingly complex world, these things continue to not stop, right? Change is the only constant. And I think with the AI, I think we've all been quite taken by the fact that, well, you can just compose a song, right, on demand. So what's next for arts education? What do we teach in school anymore if basically you can just enter a question in ChatGPT and get your answers as well? Right, these things will not go away. These are key driving forces. Next. So from unlearning, we do need to relearn, of course, right? But to relearn, not to be frightened by some of these developments, but perhaps to see new opportunities, new possibilities, to be able to ride the wave as well. Yeah, so these are just some other examples that you can see some of the pictures on the screen. Next. Yeah, this is a new one you've seen earlier. These are the 4 priority areas that we are going to be working on for the next bound, right? Next. This is what it looks like in the curriculum, because now we're all also doing some of the curriculum refresh. So this is an example in our art syllabus where we're really talking about, in the past, right, we're thinking about technical polish, drawing well. I never thought I could draw well, in school at least. But now we're really talking about moving from learning to draw to drawing to learn, right? So it is a shift again in terms of how we want to approach certain things. So we are not talking about coursework anymore in terms of this big, sort of a task, for assignment for students, but portfolios, all right, so that they can actually see some of those progress in their work as well. I'm not sure whether we have time to play a bit of the video. No? Okay, yeah, because I had a video for the audience. It's really to see what happens when a teacher takes a student's question further. All right, and if you have a chance, I'm not sure whether they're reminding me of the time, and that's why. So anyways, teachers, again, are key, all right, in terms of how we can actually elevate and extend learning as well. This was something that was just announced a few days ago, just last week, actually, performing arts-based learning, and we hope that we are now taking arts learning, arts education to that next level as well. I think this is actually in the papers. You can read about some of this development. We are looking forward to this space, working together with arts groups and artists as well, in order to see how we can actually synergize further as well. And I think that takes us to the next, to the last slide, and perhaps we can end in the last slide. So you keep hearing these words, right? 21cc, disposition, value. So it almost feels as if, like we've heard this all before. But I think at the end of the day, I say, the time to act is now. As 21cc leaders, educators, parents, creative practitioners, artists, we must ourselves continually learn, unlearn, relearn, encourage innovation, partnerships, collaborations across sectors, across intersections as well, to create new value. Just look at the possibilities around this room. So change is never easy, but it is our responsibility to shape the future of learning and ensure that our students become creators, connectors, and contributors, and be the best versions of themselves now and in the future. Because if not now, then when? If not us, then who? Thank you very much.
So first of all, so thank you very much to Lynn and AFTEC. I guess the reason I'm invited to be the respondent is because the past 3 years, I've been invited as a witness, as an observer, and also moderator, and also being part of this 3 years journey. So basically, from the scratch until today, I really feel like I'm part of your program, and also have this opportunity to celebrate with everyone here. So thank you, Lynn, and having this opportunity for me to also conclude my observation. And of course, thank you to Clara for giving us such an insightful sharing. I like what Clara was saying, particularly from the point of a personal perspectives. She's not just presenting as a Ministry of Culture, of Education here. It's not just about policy making, but a lot of practical experience and also cases that enrich our understanding. As she was saying, there was a lot of similarities. I can also see and reference to the Hong Kong context. And in fact, a few weeks, last week, we also had the opportunities to talk to Sharon in the Australian context. And in fact, the whole world, I'm sure everyone sitting here, we have the urgency to do something different in education. The word that resonates a lot from Clara to me is the action. It's really the action that's the matter. So I'm trying to summarize what my response from after hearing Clara, and also trying to map with JCABC project. That will give us a starting point for conversations. I'm going to say with 6 keywords or 6 areas that I can hear from Clara. First is about redefining success. I think that is the key. In the Asian context, we focus so much about the end result. The redefining success, from what I hear from Clara, again, is focusing on the process, focusing on the journey the students will encounter, and also focusing on the experiential learning. Most importantly, like what Lynn was saying, and also reference to one of the participants of the teacher, is to slow down. I think by slowing down, we are able to observe. people working in the education often is not able to slow down. Currently, my youngest daughter is having the exam. She was so packed and so stressed and lost all the interest of learning. Yesterday, we sat down and say, how about we just take a break? Don't do anything. Just enjoy the moments of being empty, being motionless. Not wow. Stand still and reflect of what she has learned. And that was a moment of smile on her face. Immediately, the release of tension of the muscle on the faces. Now then, I think that is success. That is a success of education. That's a success of the number of hours that she spent in her 16 years of education. When I witnessed some of the process of what Lin's and her teachers and the teaching artists and the school children, I see smiles. I see the enjoyment. And I think here we should embrace that celebration and redefining success. The second point, key point that I take it from Clara, I think is the urgency of now. Now. We are here talking about now and for the future. So it's not just imagining the future, because the imagination of the future needs action. The flourishing is the key word. So the flourishing is not a distant goal, but it is a journey that begins again now. Educators, we need to sow the seed. This is about sowing seed for creativity, critical thinking, including, you emphasize so many times, the real world experience. We need to take our kids out of the classroom. We need to engage with the real world. They are already living in this cyber world with the digital gadget that they have. So we need them to understand the reality. But this cannot be done just by the school teachers. I think the emphasis of collaboration, which segue to my third point of my feedback, is the policy that we heard from Singapore as a reference point is the action that make it happen. And this action, again, is not just from the policy level or school level. Clara as a principal, Clara as a teachers, work collaboratively with the parents. I don't know how many parents are sitting here, or maybe you're also holding a dual role like me as a parent. Are we only talk about our imagination, or do we walk about what we talk about? I think that is important. And the collaboration is also go beyond just the school, teachers, principal, and parents. It has to partner with the industry, partner with people. For example, in the JCABC, they partner very strongly with artists, with the artists that really be able to offer the artistic practice, the aesthetic that these artists have accumulated years from their learning and from their experiences. The fifth point I would like to draw is the power of arts education and the teacher plus artist training. Now, when we talk about the teacher training, we often think about all this responsibility. It doesn't work just because of the teachers. Now, I see closely partnership in my last 3 years of observation that JCABC is so much focusing on the teachers and the artists. Artists, like myself, we do art, but all art doesn't mean come in the package of creativity. There are times that artwork doesn't actually equal to creativity, okay? We all know. Hours of practicing on the keyboards, hours of kicking our legs up and making all this turn. How much creativity that's involved? That's involved physical training. However, often we see artists teaching, maybe taking a role of delivering artwork in schools. They're so much focusing on the practice aspect. they forget. I'm not saying that they didn't want to do it. They just forget about the process again. Because they were pressurized to make sure, like the Singapore Arts Festival, the Youth Art Festival, they're pressurized to make sure they deliver a product, a play, a song, a competition. If you don't do that, next year you may not be there anymore. I was talking with Clara. That was in between the year 2000 and 2007. I was heavily involved in Singapore. Every year, basically, I was invited to be the jury member for the excellent youth dance festival, right?
That was Singapore Youth Festival.
Yeah,
right, yes.
it's very much like our Hong Kong school dance, school music, school speech festival. So high quality, and the colleagues there was trying to tell me, to convince me to say the word. Please don't just focus on the end product. Make sure the teachers there are also doing the process. But as we know, how difficult, how easy to say that, but how difficult to deliver that. However, I see that in JCABC, they slow down. They allow rooms for dialogue. They allow rooms for communication. They allow rooms for collaboration. And most importantly, they allow rooms for failure. There have been so many times that didn't work, but they create common language that they can learn from the failure and take it on for the next years, so and so forth. So my last sort of summary is how to navigate this VUCA world and also embracing change. I think COVID has allowed us to dive deep into dealing with this VUCA world. We are able to do that. We went through these challenges. So we know there are the skills that everyone will need to do. However, are we able to embracing this change and move forward? So to summarize, my response, and I believe all the audience sitting here will be like me, truly believe that in offering education for the future, otherwise we will not be here. However, we must re-envision, rethink, shift our mindset like what Clara has reminded us on how we view, offer, and perceive the future of education. And I do want to have a little bit of action. Encourage everyone to take concrete steps to implement the ideas and the critical word. And the critical word to end is now and with actions. Thank you. I'm also asked to chair the Q&A。咁而家咧，我哋就係問答嘅時候啦。因為我相信咧，頭先好多觀眾咧喺度聽嘅時候咧，都可能有好多疑問或者有好多嘢想繼續問 Clara 嘅。So feel free to have any questions to Clara, or maybe to any the organizer, Lynn, and also the teaching artists or the teachers here to understand the process. And you can ask in any languages. Mandarin, Cantonese, 普通話、廣東話同埋英文都可以 English as well. Yeah. Yes, please.
I'm Ben. I'm actually working for a non-profit focusing on choral music education here in Hong Kong, hosting one of the largest choral festival here for students. So I'm curious actually more on the performing arts education program, because it seems to be in Hong Kong, like music education seems to be a extracurricular activities or more like an enhancement of their series, but there's actually so many like values or potential that students can learn from these educations. So what's your thought on that? And would you mind telling me more about the program itself?
Thank you, Ben. So similarly in Singapore, we have many of these performing arts CCAs. We call them co-curricular activities. Not extra, but it's outside of curriculum. I find that it is very important that these activities can also be seen as delivering some of these 21cc creativity, because often we miss this part as well, because like what Anna has mentioned, we're just caught up in let's learn this piece for this purpose, but in the process, what about the student's voice? Right, we talk about students' agency. Why is it always perhaps the instructor or the teachers deciding on perhaps the repertoire, in terms of the activities, deciding on which part they get to sing. So sometimes students in that the area of potential that you mentioned can actually be engaged in different ways as well. A simple, question about, I've got 3 songs instead as 1 song, which one shall we, sort of pick up today or something like that. So the student's voice, I find, could be one potential area of engaging those students as well. So not just in choral music, but in the other aspects as well, right? And within the CCA context, again, it's not just the individual musician, individual performer, myself. You realize that learning, again, is social. And in that context, it's so powerful. Now, how many of you in this room remember that maths lesson compared to one of your CCA activities, right? I remember my CCA activities. I remember being in a musical. The moment before, the lights come on and you're going to be on stage. I remember that more than perhaps the maths lesson. Well, I did learn my numeracy and all that, but you know what I mean. So don't underestimate some of these CCA platforms. They are so powerful because the students remember their experience for life. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for asking these questions. I actually also want to possibly just respond. I think learning performing arts, since I'm coming from APA, and also teaching performing arts to students, it's not a crime, okay? It's not a crime, okay? don't put it wrong that you insist on the excellency, on the accuracy. It's never a crime, and because that is the ultimate goal. What I observe in my ears is how the artists actually articulate that goal through how they teach and how they inspire the learners. Yeah, whether it's kids or the adult, it's about how they articulate that. And if they're just focusing on so much, 你彈好啲，你彈好啲，你隻腳要尖啲, your feet has to be pointed, your articulation of your words are not right, your facial expression is not right. How about like what the voices of them? Are they allowed to express? Are they allowed to share? I don't understand. Because of what? Can I do better on that? I think that is about the process again, the student voice, the learner's voice. Yeah.
I just want to add on to that. I think that's so true. Don't be mistaken for a moment that creativity or 21cc means we lessen our standards, right? It is not about that. I think in the arts, what drives us is that the motivation, right, to do better. But sometimes it's not at all cost. I think that's perhaps the message. It's about the balance, and must you chase to that last, even though you're at a particular standard, must you chase to that goal with honors or goal with, is there space then, for our artist practitioners, teachers, to be able to use some of that teachable moment, all right, and perhaps to engage our students to share their knowledge or perhaps, lift, another group and so on and so forth. So excellence does not necessarily be thrown out the window just because we talk about creativity. Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce that.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Maggie. I'm an early childhood music educator. I'm using offshore approach. So I'm agree of all the process, experiential teaching. But I'm just curious about the age, our target group, because I'm the early childhood educator. So I implement that ideas to like under 6 years old. So what do you think about it? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Maggie. Remember George Land's creativity test? I mean, the kids who come to us, sometimes if we think about it, it's not about teaching creativity, even though, yes, we have a protocol here and things like that, but there are studies who say that, it is also about teasing that creativity, out in the open as well, because all of our students have that creative potential. It's how do you ignite that, right? So, I mean, I love what you're saying, to actually offer some of these off instruments, I imagine, for them to be able to play. I think that, again, would be something that they are able to take with them to the next stage of development. So age appropriateness, I think as educators, we always try to ensure that the environment is safe, that they are not overly stretched such that they become discouraged. So I think some of these deliberate, very intentional planning will actually make a difference as well. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Okay, let's take the last question.
我叫袁文德，想用家長嘅身份問呢個問題。
From a parent.
嚇，咁即係我2個小朋友咧都係受過 AP 嘅經歷嚇，咁都係好開心嘅。咁就係想問咧，即係喺一個頭先一路提到點樣提示佢哋停下，去享受下生活。
多謝家長，呢個係咪我答你啊？
係啊。
好。我作為一個院長嘅角度去睇咧，我啲同學、啲學生係好辛苦嘅，真係其實冇得停嘅嚇。但係咧就好得意，其實喺嗰個我哋嗱，我諗嚟演藝學院上堂嘅learners 咧有好多種嘅，有啲就係我哋全日制課程啦，你係 trained to be professional 嚇，咁有少少唔同，亦都有好多咧係嚟做一啲業餘班或者我哋嘅 junior program 嘅。咁當然呢3樣嘢就好唔同嘅處理方法。我嘗試用一個譬如有一個專業嗰樣嘢去講啦嚇，因為我哋啲時間係 pack 得好實啦。佢哋基本上咧，我諗唔係淨係舞蹈學院，每一個學院咧，可能係朝頭早8點去到夜晚11點，講緊可能7/24，真係講緊都好辛苦。我哋最近咧都係 create 咗一個可行性，一個叫做 white space， 係啦。我哋嘗試係一個 white space， 即係話一個空間俾喺我哋嘅 curriculum 裏邊嚇。我哋16週裏邊，我哋有2週乜嘢都唔好教，乜嘢都唔好做。咁當然有啲學生就真係走咗去遊埠旅行啦，因為佢當你話咩都唔使曬。但係其實有時調翻轉，我哋又諗啦，如果佢真係想去出去做一個 excursion 嘅時候，如果個 excursion is about appreciating or about 俾佢自己放空嘅話，咁有時我都會覺得 why not？ 係咪有一個空間咧？咁當然啦，亦都有學生調翻轉就會話：我俾咗錢16個週㗎，嗰2週點解會唔上堂咧？所以我諗咧，即係好多時我覺得最緊要就係我哋要體諒翻去嗰個學生個 centre is the learners。I think all we are looking here， 我哋全部都係講緊個 learners，right？ Is who's the one？ It's the students. It's the future. Are we looking at that or that person as a human being？As someone that we want to nurture, you overwater, die. You don't give supplement, die. But when is the suitable time to water? When is the suitable time to give nutrition? It's determining on everyone sitting here. Thank you.